Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healthy Living, Happy Life, where we talk about everything when it comes to nutrition, eating real food, lifestyle, menopause, truly anything that is going to help you live better as you live longer. That is what we are here to talk about. I'm Denise Stiegel, your host, and today I am here with two of my favorite people, Lauren Yellen Weinberg, who I have known for several years and enjoy spending time with when I'm in Philadelphia. Lauren is a speaker, a coach, and consultant with Lasting Change Wellness. Lauren, thank you for being here. This is going to be fun.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait.
And my friend Jeanne, so those of you who follow me know that I am friends with Jeanne Gallagher, who is in Sacramento. I think she's in Sacramento today. Sometimes she's in Maine, sometimes she's in Florida. I just saw her in Arizona, so she's all over the place. Jeanne is a financial advisor with Seaside Solutions, and she is also the podcast host of Discover Rising Tides. So, ladies, welcome. Jeanne, thank you for participating here today. This is going to
Oh,
be
glad to be here. Glad to be here with both of you.
so today the conversation is it's very personal to each of us. We are talking about our menopause journey. Obviously, you see three women here. We're all within 10 years of each other, I think. Um, and we
Some of us on the north side of that 10 years, but yes.
all in a range.
Yeah.
And so each of us have had a very unique journey for ourselves. When it comes to menopause, no one is on the same path. We truly are on our own journey. The challenges that come with that sometimes is we don't know who to ask questions to. We don't know what to expect. So we're here today to just to help you understand a little better that your path is yours. You may learn something very important from one of us or from all of us, that you can take and apply to your own journey. You could take to your physician, because I think it's so important that as we're going through this, we are talking to our physicians, and sometimes it's not the physician who you think it is. That they know where you are in this journey, but most important, it's really important to know where you are along your journey. So I'm going to start with the first question. Ladies, what was your first sign of menopause, like at the beginning? Now, all three of us are postmenopausal, so I think we may all remember the beginning. We may want to have forgotten it, but I think what was that? What were those first signs, and how did it impact your daily life?
You know, it's funny, you don't know until hindsight sometimes,
Mhm.
right? But I hear this so often from people. So you can be in perimenopause, like before menopause, for 10 years. And I think some people even longer. And what I didn't realize was a sign in my 40s was that I started to have incredibly heavy periods. And I've heard that from many people. I mean, I had a day or two where I could not leave the house. I mean, the things I used to do to try to prepare myself to be able to leave. And within an hour, I would have to be running home. And it's truly disruptive, incredibly disruptive to your life. And it went on like that for years. And I had the flexibility at that time where I could stay home for the day, but many people don't.
Mhm.
And my heart goes to them because I can't imagine you'd be running every 15 minutes. And I remember a couple of times being caught on like an overseas flight. And it's happened more than once. And I mean, we're really like letting it all hang out here today.
Yes, we are. That's what we do.
If you're the kind of person who needs to put your fingers in your ears and go loud, then,
Yes.
trigger warning. I mean, I remember once sitting on a newspaper on my way home, and thank God I was wearing black pants because I was
Mm,
bleeding through the entire flight. And there was like nothing I could do about it. Nothing. Didn't even have my luggage with me. Like there was nothing I could do about it. And people don't realize that's actually a sign of perimenopause. So things get worse before they get worse.
Well, I didn't even know that until just now. I was today years old when I realized that that is true because I always had that issue. Always. And it was just what I dealt with on on a regular basis. And it was to be expected.
Wow. Your whole life.
Always.
Wow.
Yeah, always. Yeah. So I didn't think of it as being perimenopausal. I just figured it's what I do. So that wasn't that wasn't a change for me. So I don't know whether that was part of the perimenopausal or not. I don't know. But yeah, it was incredibly inconvenient all the time.
absolutely. And of
Man.
course, I had the complete opposite problem. I had always had very light periods, like to the point where I had more symptoms ahead of time. Like 2 days before, I was like, oh, I have a migraine. I have back cramps. Oh, I'm getting my period. So 2 days later, it would show up. I'm like, oh, I had my period. I'll go to the bathroom an hour later or 2 hours later. I'm like, oh, it's gone.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Yeah,
So for me, that
not
actually
so much.
affected me in different ways in the rest of, for my life. So heavy period, I would have at one point in life, I would have welcomed a heavy period because my periods were so light. I struggled with getting pregnant.
Yeah.
So that was
Mm.
something that my doctors kept saying, oh, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. Only to understand now that, yes, that could have actually been an issue. And every now and then I'm going to pick on the doctors. I love them. They're there to help us and to support us. More often than not, they don't know how to help us yet. So I want to go back to Lauren for a quick minute. Lauren, as you were going through this and you were experiencing these heavier periods, did you think to mention it to your doctor? Did they have any explanation, support, anything for you?
I did mention it to my doctors, and no, they didn't. And I think that the message that we're often given, because it is so unique for everybody, right? And yes, when you speak to enough people, you'll find similarity of symptoms. But just Jean saying that she suffered with that level of a heavy period her whole life. And I don't know if they talk to you about going on the pill or not, but right, because that makes people's period lighter. I was not interested. Maybe they offered me that, but I was not interested by my mid 40s to go back on the pill. It's just not what I wanted. And that was the only thing they really had to offer me. And I think that, maybe look, politically, it's a women's issue. I think hasn't gotten a lot of attention. There's not a lot of funding always for women's issues. It's a female issue. I'm going to use the words. It's a female
Yeah,
issue.
attitude there.
Not
Right.
taking me off a list, right? But like, I think that because it's so different for everybody, both just as you age, starting from when you're a teenager, and then menopause is really understudied. So I think that just like doctors don't know a lot about nutrition, I think doctors, even gynecologists, don't know a lot about the options and the breadth of experience that women have for menopause.
Yeah.
True, true.
I was, I guess, really fortunate because I was in Maine and I had a GP, and his wife was a midwife. So and she was a holistic midwife, and we're talking about the 80s
Yeah.
in Maine. So he had a different outlook I would say a traditional GP because he had the influence of his wife as a midwife, and in that environment that I was in, more natural um, resources were normal. And I had fibroid.
Fibroids. Yeah, they're small
They,
tumors.
okay, yeah. And I had actually, he said, this is where He said, just let them be. They will reduce over time if this is the only thing you're dealing with. Not that it's, if this is all you're dealing with, let them be. And I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. And there was a more aggressive doctor in the area, and she was known for doing hysterectomies. And so I was like, I'm going to go see her. He goes, okay, but you better check with me first. So I did, and she was like ready to sign me up. And I went back to him, and he brought in somebody else to consult with me too. And I determined that, that really wasn't the right option for me. But this woman was very quick to do this type of a procedure quite often. And thank goodness my doctor was um as connected as he was, but also as willing to have conversations as he was, but also let me do my own research too and get it out of my system, if you will. And, I was lucky that I didn't take that course and listen to him and let it just progress through, because as you become closer to menopause, those at times will decrease. And if a heavy flow is all you have, and that's the only issue, then I was really okay with that because it was what I've been dealing with all the time. So it wasn't anything that it just occurred, and it was always, and I'm fairly active back then too, and I don't know, bike ride, and here we are. What are you going to do? Yeah. What are you going to do? You deal with
So,
it.
so we actually, this is a very good point. Traditional medicine, a little bit more of a natural medicine.
Mhm.
So often those two worlds are trying to meet. And the patient, us, we are the patient. I think we're the one that has to bring those two worlds together. Because you're right, the medical world, this is what they know, this is what they've researched, this is the option, or these are their options. Naturally, well, let's just see what else there is. Now, women have been doing this, going through menopause for thousands of years, many, many generations. This is really in the last, say, what, 30 years, 50 years, that women are struggling as much as we are
Don't you think there's
with.
a reason for that? Like, don't you, right? Don't you think that maybe, right, you do, because I know, all right. So one of the things that you know about me is that I am vegan 1 month out of the year.
January.
And not only, right, January, yes. And not only vegan, but no carbs and no sugar, no alcohol, like clean as a whistle for a month. And for years, even after I stopped getting a regular period, in mid-February, I would get a period.
Mhm.
And so I know that our bodies are really affected by the things that we eat. And I believe that they're affected. We know so many things affect hormones. If you use Roundup on your lawn, if I don't know, there's all kinds of things, and you would know better
The
than me.
laundry detergent.
The laundry, I mean, so many things interrupt and affect your hormones. And I think that as our world has evolved, that this picture for women has probably evolved as well. And so I think that, yes, it probably has gotten worse. And also, I think our expectations have shifted a little bit. And, the fact that they said to Jeanne, well, you'll just have to deal with this. And somebody just said that to me the other day, that somebody was suffering like I was, that was my first symptom, was the heavy bleeding. Somebody said that their doctor said, well, just deal with, you're just going to have to just deal with it. And I'm like, wait a minute. I tell people to expect amazing all the time, right? It's
Mhm.
about mindset and having a standard for yourself and to expect amazing. And the doctors are like, well, just deal with it. And I'm like, that's not good enough.
That's not
It's not
amazing.
okay. That's not amazing. And it's not okay. And because maybe you didn't have this symptom, you're like, how hard is that to deal with? But it's very disruptive. These things can be very disruptive, and it's not okay to tell people just accept it. when there are things that you can do. Oh, and because I kept getting that period once a year, they
Mhm.
wouldn't put me on hormone replacement therapy because they said you're not done yet. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not done? I'm telling you this is related to my nutrition. Don't tell me I'm not done. And I had to find a new doctor.
Yeah, that's that actually that right there, having to find a new doctor. So many women struggle going to their doctor, whether it's their OBGYN, their nurse practitioner, or family practice doctor.
Mhm.
They are not, they don't feel heard or seen or kind of just brushed off, like, just have to deal with it. Or, this is just, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I'm ignoring you because I'm the doctor and, I'm smarter than you. Are you? Again, natural, it's really interesting, the natural and traditional medicine, traditional here, Western medicine. um I think there really is a challenge with both of those worlds. They say they want to come together and they want to help, but they still are really stuck in their mindset. There's that word, mindset. They come from a different place. And I think if we understand that as women, a medical doctor is there to fix the symptom. You have a symptom, I have this pill, that's what you take. If you want to get rid of your headaches, because I still suffer from headaches,
Mm.
they wanted to put me in an antidepressant because I had headaches. And I'm like, I said to him, the doctor, it was the OBGYN and then a neurologist, but don't you want to find out what's causing the headaches? And the answer was, don't you want to get rid of them?
Mm. Yeah.
So this is a time where we have to understand that we do have to be our own advocates, but in order to do that, we need these conversations.
Because it
So
is challenging to be your own advocate if you don't have information and all you have is Dr. Google, because we're all going to
Dr. Google
die
was
when
my
you.
friend for a long time until I found some real people who could support me. Let's move to this next question. How did your perception of menopause change from then to now? So prior to menopause, so you're in your 30s, early 40s, what did you think about menopause if you thought about it? What were your expectations? And what is your understanding now, that something you would tell your younger self? Jeanne?
I didn't have any. So, well, no. Why one expectation would have been, I don't have to deal with this monthly thing anymore. That was
Mhm.
it. Me, oh, whoa. That was my only expectation, hope. But I honestly I didn't know. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't know that I should know more. So, but my my transition through all of this was probably a little bit different. And I think I don't know, but I think I got lucky through this because I had resources that I didn't, that I had a friend that she's an amazing acupuncturist and Chinese medicine doctor. And so I was feeling a little off,
Mhm.
and I could go to her and I could explain in how I was feeling to her, and she could understand it because she's used to asking questions in that manner. I feel a little dark in these places. I feel a little off in here. And she treated me for a while. And it just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I didn't know that I was going for pre-post menopausal help. I just knew that I felt a little off, and I knew her, and she was really good at what she was doing. And I think, looking back, I've never had a hot flash. I don't even know what that's like other
Lucky.
than talking to you. So,
Jeanne,
and
you definitely got off easy on that one because
yeah. So, what did it have anything to do with Dawn's her help and her assistance through that? I have no idea. But I also think that it had to have helped.
yeah, I would bet to say absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, and the problem with that is that we're all an N of one, right? If we were a
Mhm.
research study,
right.
one, as Denise said at the top of the hour, is that we're all unique.
Mhm.
And there's this whole range and litany of symptoms. And some people don't notice. I remember asking my mother-in-law when I was suffering so acutely, what was it like for you? She said, I didn't even notice. And that shocked me because I'm like, you couldn't have experienced what I'm experiencing because you can't not notice it. But that's sort of like almost what I'm hearing from you, Jeanne. And who knows, right? You don't know whether you would have had a bigger picture, more
Mhm.
symptoms or not because you were getting these treatments.
Mhm.
That's all you
Yeah.
know. So two
Yes.
things are true, but we don't know if they were causative.
And my
Right.
diet's really clean.
Hmm.
Back then I was vegetarian. Well, I can't really say vegan because there was some things in there, like a little, very little bit of
Jeez,
dairy, but yeah,
Jeez.
geez, that's it right there. But I've always been a fairly clean eater
hmm
too, so that does help. Some of these other hormonal outside influences that affect your hormones. I'd like to say that I was avoiding a lot of that in my lifestyle. However, I don't know, but that's just my assumption. It's like you don't get a do-over and get a do-over or try some other things and get to this point to see if you were different, right?
I don't want to do over. I don't want to get this.
I
This
don't
I
I don't want
behind
one
you,
of those
behind you.
either, just for the record. But it's hard to know exactly what because I never tested my
Right.
hormones
What was
back
the
then.
cause and effect?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And
It's
that's
so
the
it's
thing, maybe there
interesting.
are more resources now to do that,
Hmm.
to test your hormones. And no,
Yeah.
nobody ever mentioned to me testing anything. And even after starting hormone replacement therapy, nobody has ever tested me for anything. And nobody really has taken the time to ask me what my current symptoms are, what they and what's not. And, when they say to you, well, is it helping? And you're like, well, it's helping these things, but not these things.
Mhm.
And they have no response to that. And I mean, it took me years to get on a different hormone and try something else and see
Mhm.
how it would affect me. Years. And that's the part that I'm glad we're having this conversation. If it just encourages people to know that, no, you don't have to have these symptoms. Because let me tell you, Jeanne, those hot flashes are no joke. They are
Mhm.
so disruptive in your life. I had so many issues. And I too thought, well, you know what? I'll stop having a period. That's going to clear up a lot of. I used to get terrible migraines, the menstrual migraines, and um, canker sores, and various symptoms that I thought would all disappear when I stopped getting my period. But when I
Mhm.
went back on the HRT, they came back.
Mhm.
And again, like it just wasn't the right hormone replacement for me, but it took me so long to figure it out. So hopefully people will hear this podcast and they will feel permission to insist that different things happen for them, whether it's, testing your levels and trying different things and maybe enhancing with herbal remedies. I used over-the-counter things, which provided some relief at times. But there is not, that I know of, many centralized places that really know how to deal with this issue.
Mhm.
There are pockets of those places. I was really fortunate at some point to come across a small company in Ohio, and the woman there who runs it, her name is Lynn. She was the person who opened my eyes to what was really going on in my body, other than the symptoms, like what was happening with progesterone and estrogen and testosterone. And I had no idea. My doctors didn't know. I lived with a doctor, and my husband was really amazing because he knew before I knew that something was going on. He didn't pinpoint it right away, but he did say to me, "Something's different with you. We got to figure this out." And
Yeah.
but most men aren't that in tune. Now, granted, my husband's a doctor, so he's in tune with people, right? But most of us don't have that other person to kind of, have that outside experience, like looking at you from the outside, going, you're acting different. You're not sleeping right. What's the
But the
deal with
thing
these hot flashes?
the thing that your husband had is he had the extended exposure to you. Because when you go to a doctor, you're in a doctor's office. in a traditional doctor's office for 15 minutes, and there's not a ton of time to take questions. If you're in front of which is more known now than it was back 10, 15 years ago, if you're in front of a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath or an acupuncturist or whoever that is, it's normal procedure to ask lots of questions and take the time. But you don't get that in a normal medical situation. It is an in and out kind of thing. And if you don't come with a list of here's what I'm feeling, and you don't take 2 weeks prior to the appointment to make a punch list of how you're feeling, you're not going to remember all of that in the pressure of 15 minutes. It's like going to a grocery store without a list, and you get in there and you don't even know why you're there. You come out with 5 things you didn't ask for and that you didn't need and nothing on the list. So the same thing happens when you go to a doctor's office. For me, anyways, I don't, if I don't have a list, I can't remember why there's something. The most important thing is the thing that's not going to get discussed.
Right. Right.
And you have to give yourself permission for that. And
Right.
that's the issue. That's the mindset shift that we all have to make, is that you are worthy of that conversation and that you can insist upon it. And that you're worth taking the time to make those lists and to note your symptoms and to say you don't have to just suck it up. Right? Is that because that's what the message was always, right? And maybe that's why people are complaining more. It's sort of the time frame that you laid out, Denise, is the time frame where women were starting to enjoy more women's liberation and, female power, and all our expectations started to shift in a lot of areas. And I think that women's health care is one of those areas where expectations are shifting. And yet these things are still taboo, right? I mean, it's still not a subject that people just necessarily start talking about around the water cooler, right?
Unless you're around the water cooler with me. I seem to talk about this a lot. Well, I want to go back to something that Lauren, you mentioned about testing. Testing is so important, and medical doctors will kind of poo-poo this. But this was my take. When I was at feeling my worst, wasn't sleeping, my night sweats would start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would
Oh my
go.
word.
It was like nonstop. I mean, how many times I had to change my clothes because I'd soak through. I mean, I remember one night in the middle of the night getting up and saying to my husband, I'm waking him up because I needed to change a seat because my side of the bed was soaked through. And I knew at this point, I knew enough. Thank you, Dr. Google. I knew enough that I knew what I was starting to deal with. But again, I didn't at this point understand, well, okay, I'm having these symptoms. What's really going on? So testing the group up in Ohio, they're called the Happy Hormone Cottage. For those of you who are listening, if you're up in Ohio, go see Lynn. If you're between like 37 and 60, even 65, go and see Lynn because she's amazing. They did, she gave me a test. It's called the Dutch test, and this is a hormone panel. Now, you can go to your traditional medical doctor and fight for a hormone panel. More often than not, the doctor will say, oh, but it's just a small shot of, in time, one, kind of day or one snapshot in time. And I understand that. Well, the Dutch test is one over 24 hours. So you get a little bit more of a time frame. But if you don't know where you are today, you can't fix things. You can't take that next step. You have to absolutely know. And so when I got the results of my test, all of my progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, cortisol levels, they do a full panel. All of my sex hormones were literally empty when it came to the level where they should be. So the way they measured it basically is like your gas tank. So we all know where full is. And at how maybe I was 42 at the time. Maybe I was a little bit older now that I think about it. So I know where full is. And I didn't expect to be completely full like I was when I was 30, but I didn't expect to be completely on empty either. So, of course, this is why I was suffering from all of these symptoms. Now, granted, as the doctor will say, that was just a shot in time, but I'm certainly not going to go from empty to full in a 24-hour period or the next week, whatever it may be, right? So, it's a great snapshot to show you where you are today. And then we can start to have these conversations and start to come up with a plan. And I
But
think that's an important.
no matter what we're doing, whether it's exercise, nutrition, finances, everything, you have to have that starting point, that baseline. And that baseline for every category that you study is a snapshot in time. So
Mhm.
that excuse is kind of dumb. Honestly, because you can't make improvements on anything, your exercise routine or your diet, your nutrition. You don't without understanding how you're eating today in order to know what changes to make.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's what's really important about no matter what medical thing or no matter what
Mhm.
situation you're in, you have to know where you're at in order to understand what needs to be touched, changed, looked
Mhm.
at.
Well, and I think part of the reason they don't do it is because they don't have a lot of answers. So, okay, now I have this information and then they don't know what to do with the information. And it sounds like maybe some people do. There's Lynn out there in Ohio,
There's Lynn out there in Ohio.
like
Well,
some
that's
people, but there's just not a plethora of people. And
but
it's not part of the training that doctors get.
the
Yeah.
system's not set up for that type of an inquiry because that inquiry takes time
Mhm.
and trial and error and it doesn't involve pharmaceuticals. So the system is set up to meet with a patient, get the general information and figure out which company has visited their office recently and provide that pharmaceutical to them quite often. I mean, that's a generalization, but it isn't. If you watch TV at all, you're going to realize every other commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial. They want us to consume these things rather than what you were saying earlier. Here's the Band-Aid versus the root cause of your headaches.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some OBGYNs who are now menopausal, even postmenopausal, who
Mhm.
have said online, I'm so sorry. They've apologized to their older patients because they didn't know. They absolutely didn't know until they started to experience the symptoms. And we touched on this earlier. There are so many symptoms of menopause. Now, again, perimenopause starts, can start. For me, it started around 37. So it starts a lot younger than we think. We think 50, 55 is menopause, right? So you have until you're 55. Ladies, you don't. Again, I was 37 when I started to notice that I was getting a little crazy. My mood swings, and I felt it wasn't anxiety, it was almost anger. Like I had this angst inside me. And that's not me. I'm the sunshine girl. Like that's been my nickname for years, the sunshine. Part of it's my hair, of course. But this was not a normal feeling. And I was so young. So, of course, menopause wasn't what we were thinking. And of course, that's not what any of the doctors were thinking.
Mm.
So, truly, when the three of us are talking about menopause and we're all postmenopausal, I want this message to go to not just women our age, but I want this to be something that we share with our daughters, our nieces. I mean, this is my poor niece. She's only 20, 22, and she understands more at 22 than most women in their 50s. But again, something that starts so much younger than we expect.
Mm.
Now, I want to look through my notes because I had questions, and of course, we've actually touched on a few of them um, as we've gone through. We talked about mindset. Lauren, you brought that up. So I want to go back to that real quick. Mindset and identity. Did going through menopause, or did that change the way you thought about yourself, thought about life, and your identity as a woman, a mom, a professional? Because I've had many conversations with women who are starting to experience symptoms, and it's affecting them at work. It's affecting their career. So, thoughts for
Hmm.
both of you?
Well, menopause brain is a thing, and that they have done some studies on, and then they find that ultimately it does resolve to some extent. Um, but you because of the hormonal shifts, some people, really do have mood symptoms, and other people have concentration problems, and memory problems. And these things are real. And I think the problem is women have been taught for a long time that our emotions are something we're supposed to have control of, and that our emotions are too extreme. We're wrong somehow, right? That we sort of value in this society that puritanical, like, get a grip, be strong, soldier on. And I think our emotions are our greatest gift in life. I think that really is sort of our inner compass. And that's why it's so devastating when these changes are happening that for us don't seem to be based in something outside of ourselves. And suddenly, like, we don't trust our own internal compass to guide us because these things are happening. And I've experienced what you're describing only after childbirth, when my hormones shift again after, like, the what seemingly like irrational, uncontrollable rage almost. I did not have that in menopause, but I can relate to that feeling hormonally post childbirth. And you start to feel crazy. And I think that's why people don't speak about it very much, because they feel crazy and nobody wants to present themselves as crazy. And if you are in an office setting, you're high-powered woman dealing with big multi-million dollar deals, you don't want to be like picking up your pen and winging it at somebody's head because you're having uncontrollable rage. And that's why I think it's so important to be aware that you're not crazy, that it is hormonal, that these are real symptoms happening internally, that there are shifts in your hormone. And yes, maybe diet can play a big factor. Maybe there are things like, they talk about certain herbs and spices that you could take that can make a difference for you, or some over-the-counter medications, or even going on HRT. But I think it's important to just give yourself permission, again, to understand that you're not crazy and that you are deserving of understanding what's happening and being able to just state it. Like, and not it shouldn't be taboo. Like, hey, I am dealing with menopause. This is a thing. Nobody would certainly say, God forbid, if somebody had cancer, oh, don't, whatever the symptoms are that go along with, getting chemotherapy or something. They wouldn't deny them that, but we're like supposed to deny our experience. And that's just a little bit of BS. It's calling a little bit of BS.
Yeah, yes, I like it. I agree. Jeanne, thoughts on that or additional thoughts?
I don't know. This is hard for me. Because I never really, until honestly, until you and I, Denise, started hanging out together. um,
Oh, I brought up her menopause.
I never really put a lot of thought into it because it was one of those things that happened. And during that time, my business had a lot of transition. And, I relocated my business and a couple of years after, and the challenges of, well, relocated twice. And the challenges of that relocation process and the challenges of building a business. And, I don't know, I never stopped to analyze how I was feeling and where that's coming from. So that it might seem like, well, I'm fairly unaware of how I was feeling. Not necessarily true. I'm pretty good at that, but I also didn't identify how I was feeling as to maybe it's coming from here versus the other pressures that are out there. And
Sure.
mostly because I didn't really it was never a topic of conversation for anybody that I was, familial or friend group or whatever. And
Right.
so it wasn't really, do I know that my mind's been a little off sometimes? Oh, sure. Do I worry about it? Not so much. No, maybe not as much as I should because I just discounted it and I can work through that. And
Mhm.
so there's that I can work through that, or maybe I just need to hike more or something. I don't know. That to get it out of the system. And I think that the unfortunate part of this experience is that it's really shows the importance of having these conversations, right? Because I'll tell you that my daughter is, as a nutrition coach, is way more knowledgeable about a lot of things. She was having some hormonal issues a few years ago and she did a Dutch test and I had never heard of it. And she realized that, oh, her cortisol levels, and she's talking about that in her 30s, for 30s, later
Mhm.
30s. And like, wow, I didn't know this was a thing.
Mhm. It's true.
So,
The conversation, because we never had the conversations. Now, my sister and
yeah.
I, who's just a few years younger than me, we were sitting at the table a couple of years ago with my mom having a cup of tea, and we were kind of talking about it. And she's like, "Well, I didn't experience any of that." And we looked at each other. My sister and I looked at each other. We're like, "What are you kidding me, lady? You were just absolutely a terror for like
Crazy.
2 years." But she didn't experience most of the other symptoms because her doctor put her on HRT very, very quickly, very early on. And she was on HRT. And this was when, this was before the women's health study came out that said that we shouldn't be taking HRT, which of course now we know was a flawed study and HRT is a good thing, especially estrogen. Estrogen actually has over 400 functions in a woman's body. So as our estrogen is declining, no wonder why all of these things start to happen. And the brain fog thing is definitely a menopausal thing, but it can also start to deteriorate more and more as we get older, because estrogen is not cardioprotective. Well, it is cardioprotective, cognitively protective. Who,
Mhm.
Yeah.
who knew that
Yeah.
10 years ago?
Right.
Right.
Right. So again, all of these conversations to me it's important, but we need to understand what these hormones do for us in our body. And the symptoms are basically the red flags going, hey, something's going on here, right? But we need to understand what is going on. So I think that's an important piece. Okay, we're getting to the top of the hour, and I could talk to you guys about this like forever. It's so fun chatting with you. Um, I think since we're at the top of the hour, I will ask one last thing. Like, what is one last thing that you'd like for our listeners to take away from your experience, from our conversation, that will help somebody who's listening going, oh, shoot, that's what that's about? Huh, I better do a little bit more research or have a conversation with my mom, my sister, my doctor, my friends.
I think for me, it would have been super helpful if somebody had told me to start having conversations with my doctors about this stuff earlier. Like you don't even have to wait until you're having symptoms. And I think it's if you have a gynecologist that you've been using, you want to know if there is somebody who specializes in hormonal changes in that practice and what's their opinion about it and what options are available, what do they need to look out for? Like start having those conversations earlier than you think because those perimenopausal changes, as you said, you started at 37. And, if you think that like things are shifting inside you, they probably are. And they're worth having conversations about. So just like, as you said earlier, Denise, be your own advocate. Or maybe you said it, Jeanne, but like you need to advocate for yourself and you need to ask the right questions because we assume that people know and they don't. They really don't. So you might have to do some homework or some legwork and find out and talk to your friends and ask, who are you seeing? Do you have a naturopath that you see, or an acupuncturist, or somebody who helps to support you as well? It's like worth speaking about more frequently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's also important to look at the full picture because it's not just your hormones, it is your whole, and I'm going to pull your line, Denise. How do you eat? You know, what's your nutrition? What's your exercise level? And all of that plays a part because if you are very sedentary, it's going to affect everything else. And it's also going to affect your mental state also. So some of the things that you're feeling, not to discount them in any way, but some of those things that you're feeling could be affected by your lack of activity or your lack of proper nutrition, meaning are you getting enough protein? Are you overcarbed? Those carbs turn to sugar, they burn into bad things, right? And so just understanding your whole, making sure that you have the right resources to help you understand your full picture. And your GP or your traditional doctor might not always be the end all resource for all of that. And that means that we're talking to people that have the ability to, and we're excluding so many people from the conversation because we're talking to people that have the ability to find those other resources, which is unfortunate.
Mm,
I agree.
great points.
Good point. Well, hopefully people will notice that this is a great resource. And all three of us are great resources for people. So before I let you both go, I'd like for you both to tell our listeners where they can find you. What is it? What are you working on? What would you like to share about what you do and bring to the world? Miss Lauren.
Well,
We just got flip-flopping, so I'm like, Lauren Jean, Lauren Jean.
Um, so thank you, Denise. Thanks. So my business is called Lasting Change Wellness. And you can find me at lastingchangewellness.com. You can find all my social there and just figure out where you can follow me. I work with women who truly want to have a bigger impact in the world, in their personal lives and in their professional lives, and who, like most of us, end up focused on the nonsense in our heads that get in our way. So I help them expect amazing things and make amazing things happen. And I am happy to share my resource at expectamazingfree.com. Yeah, Denise loves that phrase, and she has a little sticker she put on her computer to remind her to expect amazing. If you go to expectamazingfree.com, I do have a resource that you can download to just help you start examining the mindset that you're using in your own life and how that could either be holding you back or pushing you forward.
Love it. Thanks, Lauren. Miss Jean.
So thank you. And I love talking with both of you. It's always wonderful when we're able to do this. And I hope that people that are listening are reaping some of the benefits. And if there's other information, always reach out to Denise. But for me, I wear two hats, as Denise mentioned in the beginning. As a financial advisor, I have one of my passion projects is Pathways to Financial Independence for Women, where I'm talking with professional women or women of all sorts that really want to have a better understanding of where they're at, but also want to have that safe space to have these vulnerable conversations without judgment from anybody, especially from themselves on themselves. And so if you're interested there, I'd be glad to have those conversations. And then on the other side of my land is Discover Rising Tides, my podcast where I talk with women entrepreneurs to understand, give me a chance to give me a chance to spotlight their business and spotlight their situation. We listen to their journey. How did you get to where you're at and why, and how do you serve your clients? But then also how do you show up for yourself, and how does the outdoors play a part in that if that's applicable to you? But I really want to have those conversations. I love talking with people. I love to talk. But talking with people and just having those understand, because everybody's situation is different, and what brought to you to where you are is so important to what you're doing today.
Absolutely. ladies, my friends, thank you so much for being here with me today and having this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for being here. You can certainly find me. I am on social media. You can find me there, Healthy Living with Denise. And this podcast drops every Wednesday at about 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I will see you every Wednesday if you want to see me too. So thank you, everyone. Have a great, great day. I leave you with this, as always: healthy living, happy life, your path to longevity, which means what? It means how well you're living as you age. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.